Lovely evening to you, everyone. Most welcome to another episode of Literary Deep Dive. So last week we started with the analysis of Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, of which we took a look into the background of the poet, talking about the fact that Maya Angelou was an American poet, civil rights activist, and a very important literary voice in the 20th century. So we delve into some of our popular works, which happens to be I Know Why the Cage Bird Sing, published in 1969. Also, Still I Rise, published in 1978. This particular poem, Still I Rise, is a declaration of dignity, pride, and unwavering strength in the face of oppression. So we took a look at the overview of the poem, uh, talking about how it is a subtle protest poem of resistance, confidence, and celebration of identity, particularly in the face of racial and gender-based oppression. Taking a look at the poem, Still I Rise. Last week we played the rendition of Maya Angelou herself, reading a poem. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room, just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it offward? 'Cause I laugh like I've got good minds digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your weapons. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meetings of my ties? Out of the heart of history's shade, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gift that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Okay, so we've been able to take a look at some food for thought question last week. It said the poem consists of 9 stanzas, with the first 7 in quatrains, 4 lines. The 8th stanza having 6 lines, and the 9th stanza has 9 lines. And we were able to have a quantitative interpretation to the numbering of the stanzas, The first seven stanza illustrate people's thoughts and beliefs about the persona. The first seven stanza, with four lines in each stanza, could be described as a state of constant, complete, and perfection of the condemnation of a person about a people. So if we take a look at it again, we would notice that the focus happens to be on you, and use of expressions such as trod in the dirt, twisted lies, bitterness, and sassiness upset you, beset with gloom, and bowed head, lowered eyes. So there's a lot of negativity that one can easily deduce from the first seven stanza, across the four lines that we find in each of the stanza. Then stanza 8, with 6 lines, illustrates the awakening of the sixth sense or the six senses of the personal by the third personal. So that means at this point, there is a personal rebirth of getting to know that, okay, I need to think out right. I need to think properly about my identity by the personal. And with that, that leads to the identification of who the persona is in stanza 9. So, and who is the persona? Well, if we look at stanza 9 having 9 lines, it's suggestive of the idiom, someone who has 9 lives. And what does that idiom mean? It means someone who has repeatedly escaped dangerous situations or survived near-death experiences. And, just from the old saying that the cats have 9 lives. So this symbolizes their resilience and ability to bounce back from falls and other mishap and all that. So we did a very detailed structural analysis last week, of which we paid attention to the rhyme. We said, okay, there is really no particular rhyme structure or rhyme scheme per se in this poem, considering the fact that it's a bit of free verse. The tone is bold, it's unapologetic, it's empowering, it's marked by moments of anger, pride, and challenge. It shifts from sarcastic to rhetorical questions to triumph and the repeated refrain and all that. Then the mood evolves around confrontational and reflective to hopeful and celebratory. So it starts from a particular mood, then ends on a particular mood. So the reader is actually taken on a journey from historical pain to personal and collective empowerment. So today we are going to focus more on the imagery because we stopped last week on the use of words. Use of words said most of the words are actually sensual and symbolic. The diction is also colloquial and conversational. And, there's a reason why the poets decide to make use of words in such manner. This is to actually send across some messages. In fact, if we paid attention to the use of verbs such as shoot, cut, hew, trod, and indicated that all these represent the violence of oppression contrasted with the uplifting verbs such as dance, laugh, and rise that we can find in some other parts of the stanzas. Okay, so we also paid attention to the use of you and I and the poem last week. I is more of a personal act of getting involved beyond ventriloquism. And graphologically, the letter I will always rise when written. So still I rise, still I rise. That is, letter I will always rise. You can write letter I in a slanting form or in a slant manner. It will always stand upright. Okay. Beyond that, the poem persona identify as the subjects who not only define and describe who or she is, but dictates what anyone and everyone must come to think, believe, and accept about him or her. So there was a part of a poem whereby the persona actually just focuses on what people say, what they think, what they believe. And the tone of a poem actually shifts to the aspect whereby it's not about telling us what people think, focusing on what people say, but it focuses on dictating to people or to anyone what they must think, believe, and accept about him or her. So we have the use of imagery as well. Imagery has to do with how words are used to paint pictures in the mind, mental pictures in the mind of the reader. So we have different use of imagery. Here we have natural imagery, that is with the use of words such as moons and like stars, tides, air, and all that. This kind of suggests a force of nature, unstoppable and eternal. Economic imagery, we have oil wells, gold mines, diamonds, of which they all allude to wealth and inner value, suggesting that the speaker's worth is innate and abundant. Historical imagery, author of history, shame, that's actually a very strong metaphor. Night of terror and fear, and these kind of provide a sober backup of slavery and racial oppression, because most of the slaves actually experienced nights of terror and fear, and they were actually being locked up or locked up in huts full of shame. Then we have emotive imagery, shoulders falling down like teardrops and soulful cries bring a depth of sorrow that is eventually transformed into strength. So, taking a look at the figures of speech that we find in the poem, we have the use of metaphor, and the use of this metaphor, we have you may shoot me with your words. So, here we have the use of words being serving as a metaphor for bullet. And in that aspect, it reflects that language is violent. It can kill. Language has the efficacy to kill. I'm a black ocean leaping wild. These represent strength, depth, and unstoppable movement. So that's a metaphorical allusion or metaphorical representation of to the black ocean. Ocean, that's actually deep. The ocean, is it black? If we take a look at the ocean, but the black there being used as an adjective, um, not really as an adjective. Possibly we say it in a hyperlage, so to say, because the way it's describing ocean, that's a metaphoric reference to Africa, or should I say the black race. Okay, from the art of history shape, this is a metaphor for the legacy of slavery. Then we have the use of simile as well, but still like dust. All right, so dust always rise, no matter how often it's stepped upon. Those who don't know what a dust looks like, we find it especially in the desert. It's, when the sand, the particles of the sand actually, you know, gets blown by air or wind, and it rises. Okay, just like moons and like suns, these are actually comparison with use of like as well to natural um, object. Then we have the use of symbolism. Oil wells, gold mines, diamonds, they are symbols of wealth. We have rhetorical question used throughout to challenge the audience and highlight unjust attitude. That's my sassiness upset you. So there is a way the persona uses a question in a way whereby it speaks directly to one psyche. You just want to identify with the persona, like, okay, um, why are you angry with me? Why is it that you're never happy with me? That kind of thing. And does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my ties? So these are actually strong rhetorical questions, and we have repetition in an aphora. An aphora happens, so that special kind of repetition at the beginning. Okay, so most of the several and aphora that we use just to enhance rhythm and reinforce the key ideas. And we have run online definitely, which is used to maintain a flowing rhythm and engage the reader in a continuous stream of flow. So when you're reading the poem, you wouldn't really feel like you're reading a poem because uh, the lines are running into one another. Okay, so that's the use of enjambment. Then we have parallelism. Just like hope springing high, still arise. This shows the logical and emotional consistency in the speaker's resilience. So if we take a look at, there's a consistency in the logic being applied and in the emotional outflow. Okay, so we move to the thematic aspect to it, which is the major focus for today's conversation. So we have the theme of resilience and defiance. Okay, the theme of resilience, which is the heartbeat of the poem. It has to do with unshakable determination to rise above adversity. If we read the poem over and over again, the speaker asserts that despite being pushed down, despite being insulted or underestimated, she will rise. And that leads to we getting to identify with the poet herself, which is Maya Angelou, to understand what she must have gone through in life. Growing up, she suffered a form of gender-based violence, being molested as a young girl and all of that. Then growing up as well, she suffered what we can refer to as racial injustice or racial discrimination, as she was being pushed down, but literally and figuratively through the use of words. She was insulted. You're a black girl. You're ugly. You're good for nothing, and all of that. But she was still able to show that unshakable determination to rise. So Angelou uses repetition, metaphor, and simile to reinforce this idea of rising, that it is not just a decision, but it is something that it's inevitable. So the dominant theme of the poem is the speaker's ability to rise above adversity in different formats, which has to do with maybe social adversity, historical adversity, or personal adversity. Okay, so each stanza in the poem returns to these um, thematic focus of defiance and that refusal to be broken. Most females these days as well go through that, this body shaming or whatever it may be, or kind of molestation. But regardless, the poem, when we read it, so when any lady reads it or any female reads it, they get to identify with it that I must not give up. I refuse to be broken. Or even if I'm broken, I refuse to remain in my broken state. Okay. So with that, we have the theme of Black identity and historical injustice. So Angelou here affirms that the dignity of Black identity and also confronts historical oppression. She represents the resilience of our ancestors. So we could actually find in a part of the poem where she mentioned the fact that out of the out of history's shame, uh, arise up from a past that is rooted in pain. And if we take a look at the last stanza, bringing the gift that my ancestors gave, rising into a daybreak that is wondrously clear. With that, all these are indicative of a Black identity, you know, the gift that our ancestors gave. That is a gift of identity. And that identity is in a blackness. You don't get to see someone. You can't talk about seeing someone until you see their color. So it's just part. of who a person is. Color is part of what shapes a person. And accepting the person's color is part of accepting the person. So if you want to accept that someone is fully human, you can't take away the color from them. So, and humanity is colorful. So we find Maya sticking through to this, that there is a form of historical oppression based on a color. And regardless of how it may be, she's going to depict what we call personal triumph. She's going to depict what we call cultural legacy and generational strength, regardless of what it may be. So we have the theme of feminine confidence and sexuality. Obviously, right from the beginning of the poem, we can identify that, okay, this poem must have been written by someone who is a female or someone who identify with the female gender. So we find that through the use of some rhetorical questions, such as, does my sexiness upset you? Dancing like I've got diamonds at the midden of my thighs. You know, with these, Angelou reclaims the body and identity of a black woman. If we are to correlate, we can find a semblance with the poem Black Woman, Naked Woman by Leopold Sédar Senghor and all that. And with that, so with that, we can actually see to it that there is a high play on the sexuality of the gender. So I dance like I've got diamonds at the making of my tie. So with this, Angelou takes pride in her femininity and autonomy, transforming what the society deems shameful into power. So hope, determination, and optimism. This is another theme, and it can really be connected with the first theme, which has to do with the theme of resilience. So for anyone who displays resilience, then we find that such a person must be determined, must be optimistic, and must be full of hope. And the natural imagery such as moon, suns, tides, air, they all present rising as inevitable and eternal, and they suggest hope that cannot be extinguished. So moon will always be there, sun will always be there, and air will always be there. And because all of these things will always be there, the persona also believes that she will always be there and she will definitely rise, just as all of these natural elements have risen. So voice has a power, language is the weapon. Angelou words again with precision and grace. You know, the poem itself is an act of resistance. It's a refusal to be diminished by words. It says, you may shoot me with your words. That's very strong, you know. So there's a way she painted all of these. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I will rise. So the poem does not just use a diction to portray what she has gone through or what she's going through, but to also fight whatever she has been subjected to. So, words or language serves as the weapon used against her. And language is also the weapon she has used to defend herself or to fight back. So, we have the theme of racial and historical identity just as it has been mentioned earlier, under the theme of Black identity and historical injustice. These are quite a relative racial and historical identity, how she's able to draw from the historical trauma of Black people, especially the African American women. and reference into slavery, historical shame, and ancestors. The poem is a tribute to the ancestral legacy of strength and survival. So, last but not least, we have the theme of resistance to oppression. Just as it has been mentioned again, theme of resilience is actually a major theme, and resilience and resistance are quite relative. Okay, so through the use of words, highs, hatefulness, the oppressor tries to destroy the speaker's spirit, yet she resists every attack, symbolically declaring that the spirit cannot be crushed. So there's a way they tried crushing her psychologically, emotionally, and physically. But one thing never dies in her. Her spirit never dies. Her spirit is always resistant to oppression. And that even justify theme number 5, which is voice as power. So regardless of everything, she never loses her voice, the voice from within. So even at a point in her life, she lost her voice literally. Like she refuses to speak and all of that out of fear or whatever it may be. But she still did not lose her voice. So she lost her ability to speak, not because she could not speak, but she was just muted emotionally. But regardless of that, she still decided to speak out when the time became necessary to speak. So, with this, we've been able to take a critical look at Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. It's a literary deep dive into Still I Rise. We started last week and we conclude in this week. So, you can do well to catch up on the episode, the last episode. Next week, we get to delve into another literary dive to one of the texts selected for the WAEC analysis. So thank you so much. We do hope to catch up next week, same time by 6 to 7